Alright. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. So we're going to continue where we left off. We were talking about marijuana being haram, and the argument about it not being haram is because they say it's not addictive, number one. And you can argue that it's not addictive like cigarettes, it's not addictive like heroin, it's not addictive like, it's not addictive like methamphetamine or other drugs. So that's one argument. And the second argument is that it doesn't intoxicate like wine. Because the word intoxication means that something is actually toxic. So there's some kind of chemical or something like that. So marijuana is very natural. It's not even fermented. So wine, for example, is fermented. But marijuana is just a plant. So it's in its natural state. So these are some of the arguments that are made. But the thing is, the definition of intoxication in Islam is something which impairs your intellect, impairs your judgment. Therefore, marijuana falls into the same category, opium falls in the same category, ecstasy and MDMA and all of these other drugs, they all fall into the same category, as well as all the other alcoholic drinks, okay, which can potentially get you, impair your intellect, your ability to think correctly. And even though people will make different kind of arguments, they say, no, you know what, I can smoke marijuana or I can do ecstasy and I can drive still. So therefore, driving is the example that I'm still in control. But even if you can drive, it doesn't mean, even if you can drive fine, it doesn't mean that your intellect is not impaired. In the sense that if you were to make a joke to somebody, or you were to say something, that person may just start laughing for no reason, like acting almost like a child, like laughing for nothing. And they say, well, why are you laughing? And then they're just gonna, inside something's going on in their mind that they would not be doing this had they not been high in that situation. So it's important to realize the difference. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, every intoxicant is prohibited. And then he also said, that which intoxicates in large quantities is prohibited in small quantities. So we covered that rule. Questions about impure substances. Okay, so we talked about substances which are impure. So what about an animal which is eating impure substances? Like an animal that's eating dead meat, it's eating carrion, or an animal that's eating blood, or an animal that's eating feces. This is a problem, especially in the giant factories that are producing animals now. A lot of people argue that the animals are forced to eat their own waste, or they're forced to eat some kind of dead animals, or they're forced to eat pig, for example. That's a common question. The chickens are being fed pork, or a mixture of pork mixed with something else. So what do you do in that case? They're eating something which is filthy. So are we allowed to eat those type of animals? So the answer actually is, the traditional answer has always been that if the meat or the milk of the animal has some of the effects of that impurity, then it's disliked to eat it. And if it doesn't have any of those effects, then it's allowed to eat it. Now, to modernize that answer a little bit, if you research the milk and you research the meat and you see anything which will actually be able to harm you, then it falls in the same category of disliked. It's not prohibited, but it's disliked because it can be harmful to your health. And if it's not, then it would be fine. Then it would be okay, as long as it's not affecting you. So the issue of feeding the animals, from the animals' perspective, are you messing up the animals? That's one issue which we're going to talk about. But from our perspective of eating the animal, at most it would be disliked, but it wouldn't be prohibited, depending on the effects. Okay? Yes? Disliked. If there's an effect. And if there's no effect, then it's fine to eat it. See, you don't know for sure. So like for example, if let's say there's a chicken, right? And the chicken's going to be eating their normal food. And then all of a sudden one of the chickens decides, you know what? Oh look, there's some excrement over there. And it starts eating that, right? and then all of a sudden it's time for that chicken to be slaughtered. Slaughter the chicken and you serve it to people, and someone says, you know what, I just saw the chicken eating its own excrement the other day, so what should we do? Are we allowed to eat that? So the thing is, they're trying to figure out, the scholars were trying to figure out for how long a period of time does an animal need to eat this before it starts getting affected. So they calculated, their calculation in the past was, if it's been eating impurities for 3 or more days straight, then usually the milk and the meat gets affected and you can smell it and you can feel it. So usually you can tell. But now, because with all the scientific things, they're adding impurities, but they're cleaning the impurities somehow. So it really requires somebody a little bit more science background to be able to check, is this bad for it? Maybe the meat doesn't smell at all. Maybe the milk doesn't smell at all. But if someone does research, that can actually be harmful for your health. So if it turns out to be, harmful for your health, then it's definitely disliked. If it's really going to impair your health, for sure, then of course, then it's prohibited. It just depends on the extent that it's going to be harming you. Okay. So we talked about before, is it permissible to swallow during oral sex? No, because of the impurity of the substance. Except, I mentioned, the Shafi'i school has a different opinion on that, but the majority of scholars say no. Many slaughterhouses dunk chickens into hot water after they are slaughtered to help remove the feathers. Is this allowed? This is a common question. So in a factory, for example, after you slaughter the chickens, what they do is they put the birds into the hot water. Now, we're going to talk about slaughtering and stunning and all that soon, but the issue here is you cut the chicken, right? Blood is coming out and everything. So if you dunk the chicken inside the water, then the blood and some of the guts go in that water, then it comes out, the next chicken comes in, and it's dunked inside water that's full of blood and guts and all that stuff, right? So this is the issue. Okay, so that's the issue. And the second issue is, if the water is really, really hot, right, to the extent that it's like boiling water or really, really hot water, then what's going to happen is that bloody, gut-filled water is going to penetrate into the flesh of the meat. So this is the issue. So the thing is, the answer to this actually is there's two parts. So one, if the blood has actually poured out of the animal, which usually, after they slaughter it, the blood comes out really quickly because it's only chickens that are dunked. And chickens don't have that much blood. So generally the blood's going to be pouring out pretty quickly. So once the blood comes out, the blood that remains inside the veins is what? It's okay, it's pure. So therefore, if that's the one that's being dunked into the water, in that case it would be okay. And also it depends on the amount of time. So it depends on the amount of time that the chicken is slaughtered before it gets dunked into the water. The second issue is that how hot is the actual water? So in the past, Ibn Abidin was like 19th century, they used to use the same technique, but they did it in like boiling water sometimes. Nowadays, most modern factories, I wouldn't say most, at least the factories that I've been able to research and look into, these factories don't use extremely hot water. Okay, so they're not into using really, really hot water. They use warm water, but it doesn't have to be very, very hot to get the birds to get out of the feathers, and they don't remain for a very long time inside the water. So generally that would be okay, as long as that's, the impurities are not mixing into the meat. For the most part, if it's not really, really hot water and it's done for just a moment, it's generally not going to mix into the meat. And also when you cook it, most of it's going to come out as well. So generally, this should be okay. But this is a question that people who know how the industry works, they usually ask this question. Okay? So, any question on impure substances only, before we move on? No, because because of the blood, and if the water is really hot and the other chicken goes in, then the bloody water will penetrate into the chicken's flesh. Yeah. Okay? Yes. We're coming to that. We're coming to that. Yes. She slaughtered the animal herself, or in the house? Oh, mashallah. Okay. She didn't dump it all the way in. Right. It's very easy to take out the feathers then. Okay. Yeah. Then it's okay. It's because it's not mixing. So what I'm saying is it's okay. Generally, it's going to be okay. So like that's a great example. So I didn't know it still happens. They still do it, huh? Okay. Alhamdulillah. So, okay, very good. Any questions about impurities? Just impurities.
This is also okay regarding the feeding of animal in the meat. Is it also considered as part of the picture?
Yeah, so should we be feeding the animal? No, we should not be feeding the animals impurities. Okay, if it's about impurity, yeah.
Very simple. Most of the female would understand this concept. If they are breastfeeding and they eat something, actually it is not good for the additional baby. A lot of time the baby will get sick. And they say because of the manner of eating such food is not good. For this principle, even scientifically probably will be right. An animal eating something is not improper and affecting their milk and affecting their meat.
Okay, so he's saying that if you eat something where the meat is affected, it can affect your breast milk and affect your children. So that's so that's a pretty good point. Yeah, so that requires some research, but it's a good point. It's important. Jazakumullah khairan. All right, harmful substances. So questions about harmful substances, smoking cigarettes or hookah, we already discussed that. Transformation and dilution. Okay, so does the fat of a prohibited animal transform when it's heated or when it's boiled? Does it? No, it doesn't. So take an example like lard, for example. Lard oftentimes is made of pig fat, or most of the time is made of pig fat. So if you heat it up, the way that it's made is heated, it's boiled, all of these things. But despite all of that, it's actually not changing. It's not changing into a different substance. So therefore, transformation is not taking place. Another common question is food additives. We already talked about that. Wine and dilution. Yeah. So we talked about the food additives. Wine vinegar we talked about already. Is recycled urine for astronauts okay? Okay, so this is something that NASA is developing. So NASA is figuring out a way to astronauts to urinate and then recycle their own urine so that it removes the bad parts and then you can drink it again. And those of you who saw the complete failure of a movie, Waterworld, you probably remember that scene. I guess nobody else saw it besides me back in the days. Like one of the highest budgeting films, and it was a complete failure. Yeah. So you remember the urine part? Yeah. So this is where Muslims started asking the question, right? When a celebrity goes and does it, is this allowed in Islam? Okay. So is it allowed? Yes, because once you've gone through this purifying process, it's not urine anymore. It's transformed into something completely different. So it's called water or purified water, whatever you want to call it, but it's not urine anymore. So yes, if we send a Muslim to the moon and they're going to be utilizing this procedure to take less water, they can drink it because transformation has taken place. Okay? Exception of necessity. So we did talk about necessity, right? Yes. So can something unlawful be used as medicine? So for example, can you use urine, which is impure, as medicine? Can you use alcohol or wine as a medicine? Can you use gelatin as a medicine? So the answer is, which we talked about already, there's 3 conditions. And if the 3 conditions apply, then yes, you can use it for medicine. What were the 3 conditions? There is no other alternative. Number 2? No, not dying and starving. 1, there's no other alternative. 2, it's known to work. And number 3? Huh? No, that was 1 and 2. And no other option. What's number 3? It's actually affecting your life. It's not like I have a paper cut and this is really bothering me. Therefore, I'm gonna take some opium to remove the pain. Right? That's not gonna work. Or morphine, to remove the pain. That's not gonna work. So it has to be something that's actually affecting your life. So in that case, yes, it's okay. Now there is a statement of the Prophet which says that he has not created cure for any illness in these prohibited substances. Right? So what he's talking about, prohibited substances meaning like wine itself. So you take alcohol or wine or beer or whatever it is, and you drink it completely in order to get intoxicated, and that somehow is going to be a cure for you. It's not going to be a cure. So that's what he was talking about in particular, rather than taking an element of something and mixing it with something else and then having an effect. So there's two different things. So that's important to understand. So the same thing would apply here. You apply the three rules, and this is where the debate is. So medicinal marijuana, if there's no other alternative, it's known to work, and it's really affecting your life, then even in that case, it would be allowed. Right? And I'm hoping to set up a debate on medical marijuana at our masjid soon, because we had a nice debate on Syria last week. The Syria? Yeah, it's recorded. It's not up yet. It's not up yet. Someday it will be on IOC. Yes. I just can't tell you what day that will be, but it's there. It was excellent, mashallah, very very nice. Yes. It doesn't matter if it's injected or swallowed. It doesn't matter if it's 1% alcohol, 10% alcohol, 5% alcohol. Right? It's the same thing.
What about how like cocaine and drugs used to be sold actually over the counter, like for headaches?
Yes.
What about cases like that where
Yeah, like
advertised not being
absolutely. That's why when we say it's known to work and there's no other real alternative. So they used to give, like for example, in America, they used to give whiskey to kids to calm them down. Right? Now there are other alternatives to calm children down. It just takes a little bit of effort. Right? In Pakistan and India, I know that some parents still, at least the previous generation, what did they used to give to calm the kids down? Huh? Infantol. No, something else, even worse than that. Opium. Yes, they used to give them opium, straight up. Right? And the kids are enjoying. They're the best kids you'll ever see. but that's definitely not a solution to the problem. So one, it's children crying is not legitimately impairing your life unless it's like really, even colic, you can deal with it. Number two, it's not proven that there's no other alternative. There's other alternatives to opium for your children to keep them calm, for example, right? So,
like heroin? I think heroin was released as an alternative to actually get people off of cocaine, right?
that I don't know, but that wouldn't surprise me.
My grandma gave me Coca-Cola.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
I want to just add something. Sadly, actually, this is the case in Afghanistan right now. I hope in some of the village, people, they do handicraft carpet. And the woman, in order to keep their children asleep, from youngest 6 months to oldest,
They use opium. Huh? This is very unfortunate. Something that people don't know, interesting fact that people don't know, is that before United States invaded Afghanistan, under the Taliban regime, whether you like them or you hate them or you medium about them, opium production in 90% of Afghanistan, according to the United Nations, was stopped to 0%, completely. And only after America came in did it start production again. So that's a very unfortunate, because usually it's argued the opposite. But that's actually not the case, because the ambassador from Afghanistan actually came before September 11th to USC. And they did a program here in the university, and it was confirmed that the United Nations report issued that statement. So anyways, that's just a side note. Question, when can I Okay, so we talked about, so gelatin we've actually talked about last week. So remember we said that if there's alternatives, so for example, there's a medicine, there's a multivitamin capsule, and your Centrum, unfortunately, multivitamin capsule has gelatin in it. What do? Are you allowed to take that? Well, multivitamin, first of all, is not greatly impairing your life. It's not messing up your life. Although it's good to take it, multivitamin, it's not really necessary. And number two, there are alternatives. So alternatives, you go to the health food store and you get the one with fish gelatin or vegetable gelatin or whatever it is. So that won't work. If you have some brand new, let's say, drug that was released, let's say for something like arthritis, severe cases of arthritis, and that somehow happened to be made of gelatin, it's only coming from one particular country, and there's no alternative available, and it's really affecting your life, in that case you can go ahead and take that medicine. So common question is, well, when can I consume unlawful food? There's no halal meat in my city or my state, and it's very difficult. I'm living on campus, I'm a student on campus, or I'm on a business trip and I'm in China, and there's no halal meat around. So does that mean that I'm in a case of necessity as well? Well, the simple solution is eat vegetables. Right? Eat vegetables, get some dried meat, get some dried halal jerky, and take it with you. So this doesn't count. So only if either your life is in danger or you need it for a valid medical necessity. So this is a common question that everyone has, especially students who come from like Muslim countries and they go and study in a place where it's no Christians or Jews in that area, right? So then there's no argument, and we're going to cover that. There's no argument that the meat is allowed there. So if you go, for example, to let's say Vietnam or something like that, and you happen to be studying there, or you're in Russia. Okay, there's Christians in Russia, but for the most part, they're generally not. You're in Russia, or you're in one of those Soviet areas, Ukraine or something like that, and you're studying there, going to medical school, and you're living on campus. What do? You have a pass, and they're serving you meat. What do you do in that case? This is not a valid reason of necessity, because you grew up on chicken and you have to have chicken. No, you just avoid it. It's not an exception. Are tranquilizers such as Valium and Xanax allowed? What about morphine for intense pain? So based upon the principles that we've covered, are they allowed? If you need them, then yes. If you're on the battlefield, something happens to your leg, there's no other thing, you need morphine, you can take that morphine. Although you should be very careful, because morphine is very addictive. Yeah.
Would over-the-counter sleep aids like Benadryl be considered intoxicant?
I don't think so. General over-the-counter, do they really impair your judgment?
They make me sleepy.
No, sleepy is one thing, but it's not like impairing your judgment. Making you sleepy is one thing. But in terms of altering your mind in the sense that you're becoming like a little bit, you can't function, somebody's going to ask you a question, if you had to take a test, you'd be like, you wouldn't be able to answer the test properly.
Sleepy.
Yeah, sleepy is one thing. You sleep on the test, you just fall asleep on the exam. That's fine.
I would take them to sleep.
Yeah. No, taking something for sleeping is different than impairing your mental facilities. Yeah, so I think they're two different things. Yeah.
Somebody has been like older people and then they are given Xanax and then it puts them to sleep, but it is a mind-altering drug.
So they should only use it when it's really affecting their life and they really need it for that reason. All right. So if that's the case, it's really affecting their life, there's no alternative available, then they can use that. So, yes.
I know somebody who's on Xanax because he needs it to calm herself down. But then the fact that I've seen on her that whatever happens in the daytime, if she takes the Xanax, she doesn't remember anything whatever. And I told her that this morning when she wakes up, she said, and if you remind her, she said, oh, this is the thing. But the doctor said that she needs it. She's on top of the
Yeah. See, the thing is, generally, you're supposed to take the advice of an expert doctor, but you should always get second and third opinion. She get what? Oh, she's gotten many opinions. All of them recommended the same thing. Even Muslim doctors would say the same thing. Then it's going to be better for her. So you have to really weigh the harms, pros and cons. For 10 years. Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in that, but generally what you do is you take the advice of your doctor, what's going to be affecting you and harming you more. No, I'm not saying that. So I'm saying using alcohol as a medicine directly, like a cup of wine or a cup of red wine, like people argue and all of that, absolutely not. But if there's alcohol as an ingredient inside, then we apply, number one, the same principle of taking it as a whole, and number two, if it's a necessity, medical necessity, such that if you drink enough NyQuil, let's say there's no alternative to NyQuil, and then you drink enough NyQuil, you can potentially have some kind of, feeling or whatever it is. Although you're not going to get fully intoxicated, you're going to get something. So in that case, it could be allowed. But is there an alternative that would do the same thing for you? There probably are pretty good alternatives. So you probably want to avoid that. Okay. You mean vanilla extract? Yeah, so we talked about that as well. So you judge the whole product. So it can intoxicate you since it's mixed in, therefore it would be okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. No, we're not talking about Ahl. We're going to get to Ahl al-Kitab now. We're talking about Ahl al-Shirk, straight up, or Ahl al-Tashayyu'. Okay? The people of communists, atheists. You go to Scandinavia, for example, right? You're studying in Finland. You're studying in Sweden. According to statistics in Scandinavia, these countries up there in Europe, I think it's like 80% of people or something along that line, they say we don't follow any religion. So if the people are telling you we don't follow any religion, say no, you're a Christian. You say no, but I don't follow any. No, you're a Christian. You're white and therefore you're a Christian. That's not the way to go. Yeah. So you have to judge. So we're going to cover Ahl al-Kitab soon, but the thing is, many people assume that just because it's happens computer turn on. So just because it's very difficult in some place that we can go ahead and do it. No, it's not about difficulty. Okay. Yes. Same thing. The three. Just apply the three conditions to everything, and it gives you the answer. It gives you the answer, inshallah. Yes. About what? Cheese. Did we cover? I think we covered cheese. We didn't cover cheese, huh? Somehow, yeah, we talked about rennet, right? Okay, so rennet. Okay, so cheese is made with rennet, right? So basically, you have milk and you pour the rennet into it, and it starts to congeal, on all of that. So the thing is, rennet can be made from pigs. It can be made from cows, bovine animals, or it can be made from like vegetable substances. There's also synthetic rennet as well. So the thing is, there's 4 groups here. So synthetic rennet is perfectly fine from vegetable sources or whatever, no problem. The second is cows or other animals which have been slaughtered by Muslims. No issue here, right? Cows and other animals which have not been slaughtered and they're considered dead meat, right? This is an issue of debate among Muslim scholars, but the opinion that I feel is a stronger opinion is that the rennet and the milk of this animal is separate from the meat of the animal itself. Therefore, even that would be okay. Okay, so if even if it's from beef, but it's been slaughtered by Muslims, it's also okay. Now, when it comes to pork rennet, porcine rennet, this is the real issue. Okay, because it's coming from a pig. Now, the question is, because the pig is considered to be impure as a whole, all of its parts, should we take, what do we do about porcine pig rennet? So the thing is, the opinions are, number one, it's clear that it does not transform. So transformation does not take place. That's pretty much agreed upon across the board. So there's the problem with that. Now the scholars who allow it, they go with the principle of istihlak, which we covered last week, right? So dilution. So they say because the actual amount of rennet is so minute, we use the principle of dilution, and therefore it would be okay. Okay? And like I said, I'm still in two minds about the dilution principle. No, you can't conclude any cheese. If you accept the istihlak, the dilution principle, then you can conclude that any cheese is acceptable. Absolutely. If you don't accept that principle, then you can't conclude it. There's no fixed percentage. That's the thing. It's just something that scholars have estimated. But rennet in the end product is very, very, very small. That's for sure. The question is, should we use the principle of dilution or should we not use it? So that's a really big debate among modern Muslim scholars today, and it's even a debate among Jewish scholars. Yeah. Okay, no, no. See, dilution, when it comes to using it for wudu or something like that, is almost agreed upon by most scholars. Yeah. They don't have a set ratio, I don't think. But they just say, you figure out what small is. So if you have a bucket of water, and you have like 2-3 drops or 5 drops of urine or something like that, or a few drops of blood or something like that, you'd generally be okay. Such that you can't perceive it. That's really their main principle, is that you mix it around, and you're like, okay, well, I know it fell in, but I can't see it, I can't taste it, I can't smell it. That's pretty much what they used to use. Because everything was, they didn't have little tiny ingredients. So everything was big, so they say if you can't taste it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't see it, then you're okay. But now with ingredients, that doesn't really mean anything anymore, right? Because it's different. Yeah.
When it comes to meat, non-halal meat is organic and better than using the halal meat.
Oh, we're getting to meat. We haven't gotten to meat yet. We're coming to meat, inshallah. So, okay. So should we move on to meat? Yeah. Yeah, so how do you decide? So remember, we talked about, were you here last week? Okay, see, we talked about the principles in the beginning of class. If you watch the video or if you read the book, we're selling the book outside. In the introduction, it explains to you how you should take opinions. If you have a scholar that's giving you that opinion and you trust that scholar and you're not going around and shopping for fatwas, then you can do that. So that's why just read the book, it'll help you, clarify you. So basically what I'm saying is I'm giving you this because quite a few of my teachers take this position. Quite a few of my teachers are vehemently opposed to this position. So I don't want to be responsible for giving this opinion now. But if you were going to follow somebody else, I'm not going to sit and debate with you. And I'm not going to debate with my teachers because they know, I understand where they're coming from, I understand their principle. I'm not going to sit there and say, you know what, I have no respect for you anymore. Because it's a legitimate opinion. Now the question is, do we feel it's correct or not? I personally am undecided right now. Among the people who take the principle, I can give you, Sheikh Yasir Qadi is one of them. Sheikh Salman Auda and his whole team on Islam Today, they take the opinion of istihlak. Sheikh Qaradawi takes it. The entire European Fatwa Council takes it. Dr. Siddiqui takes it. And the Fiqh Council of North America takes it. Okay? And pretty much everyone else doesn't take it. Okay? Sheikh Faqih does not? Are you sure? Okay. Oh yeah, Sheikh Yasir Birjas doesn't take it, yeah. So, but you'd be surprised because a lot of people who are not taking it or not taking some of these opinions, you find that after 5 years, 10 years, they are taking them after thinking about them a little bit more, after reflecting upon them. So, you never know. So scholars will change their positions and they will change their opinions, sometimes easier and sometimes more strict. So this is just something that this is part of life. The greatest scholars just change their opinion. Imam Shafi'i changed his whole madhab. Okay? Imam Abu Hanifa used to change his opinion on several things. On wiping over socks, he changed his opinion on so many different things. So it's very important to understand this is not like some defect or something like that. This is not, well, why did you say yesterday it was not allowed and now all of a sudden, this is a legitimate thing that happens. And it's a good thing that happens. Because if no one ever changed their opinion, it means that they've been just biased their whole life. They've never changed at all. It means they're not really learning anything, so they're not adjusting. They're not adapting. Yeah. On the Doritos fatwa? Oh, just gelatin. Yeah. Gelatin. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to animal slaughter, inshallah. So let's start with the slides. Wait, I need my notes then. Okay, Bismillah. So when it comes to animals, there is a specific way that Islam has prescribed us to slaughter animals. Some of the aspects of the slaughter are requirements, meaning you have to do them. There is no other option in order to make the meat halal or permissible. And other parts are recommended. So it's important to understand the difference between the required parts and the recommended parts. Now, slaughtering animals is, let's see, yes. Slaughtering of animals is the one exception, well, maybe one of the two exceptions to the rule where a Muslim always assumes that everything is halal, default. By default, Muslim assumes that things are halal. So if you see like a chip sitting on here, for example, and you decide, you know what, it doesn't belong to anybody, I'm just going to pick it up and eat it. Generally, you can always assume everything is halal. The chips are halal. The water that you're going to be using, you see some water in a bucket, I need to make wudu. You assume that, you look at the water, nothing looks wrong. You assume that it is halal to use. It's clean, it's pure and everything. That's the general rule always in Islam, except when it comes to meat. And the reason why that is because of a lot of statements of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the fact that animals have to undergo a certain form of slaughtering. If they don't, then they don't meet the requirements. That's why the assumption is not that an animal, if you just see an animal, if you just see meat sitting there and you have no idea where it came from. There's 10 people, all different religions, all different backgrounds, you don't know where it came from. The principle in this case is that it's not halal for you until you have ascertained that it's actually been slaughtered. This is the one exception, and this is agreed upon by all Muslim scholars. Okay? So, let's start looking at animals. So, tame and domesticated animals they have to be slaughtered in a particular way. Okay? So, let's talk about them. So, why? Why tame and domesticated animals? Those are the ones which are like cows and sheep and goats and all of that. They're pretty easy to catch. You have them in a farm or whatever it is. You can go and you can take a knife and you can kill the animal. It's not very difficult to do, right? So what are the conditions? The conditions are, number one, the slaughterer must be a Muslim, a Jew, or a Christian. It's condition number one. If the person who's slaughtering belongs to any other religion, whether they're an atheist or an agnostic or a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Jain or any other religion, then it's not going to count. So it's very important, and this shows you that there's a spiritual aspect to eating meat. Right? There's a spiritual purification that takes place in meat as well. Otherwise, you say, well, why not an atheist? Right? Somebody who left Christianity, he's an atheist now, he doesn't believe anymore. He's going to follow all the rules better than the actual Muslim would follow the rules. So just let him do. He's going to say everything that needs to be said, do everything that needs to be done. And he's even nicer. He pets the animal 3 times every time before he kills it. So why can't we do that? He's nicer to the animal. Like animals like him for whatever reason. He's missing the spiritual aspect. So there's a spiritual aspect when it comes to slaughtering animals as well. And the reason for that is because animals are living creatures, right? So our permission to actually take the life of a living creature is actually a general exception to the rule. For the sake, Allah has given us this permission because one, they've been created for us, but two, they're living creatures, so they also, their life is being taken away, so we're allowed to eat them, so there has to be something special about this. All questions, inshallah, at the end. So unless it's a clear point of clarification only on this point. But anything other questions regarding this?
At this point, actually.
Yes,
So
clarification.
just meat imported from non-Muslim country and say, when you get it, it's allowed meat. How does that work?
During Q&A session, inshallah. Yes.
I would actually answer this question later.
That's what I said. I'm going to answer during Q&A session. Yeah.
So with non-believers, would you say because the external behavior they're performing the ritual perfectly, but as far as the intention of the heart, Allah rejecting it?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Yes. They pretty much don't exist anymore. There's like 500 to 1,000 that I saw in a book which said in the 1940s there was a community of about 1,000 living in Iraq. So I doubt that you're ever going to encounter them if they're even there anymore. So, yeah. Sabi'in, Sabians, yeah. Sabians, yeah. Yeah. Very, very small community. So, yes.
But the same as like if they sacrifice in the name of, like they say, in the name of Jesus, a Christian.
We're coming to all of that. We're just talking about the religion. That's it. That's why I said just hold your question, inshallah. Just the religion, okay? So number 2, a sharp instrument must be used. Okay, you must use a sharp instrument, and this is required. And it's recommended that the knife should be extremely sharp. So using it sharp has to be there. Extremely sharp is something that's recommended so that you cause less pain to the animal. So it's actually recommended to sharpen the knife either right before slaughter or have some type of knife which is extremely, extremely sharp, which can cut multiple animals without becoming dull. Okay. Number 3, the slaughterer mentions the name of Allah by saying Bismillah, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, or Bismillah, Wallahu Akbar. Okay. If they say just Bismillah, that's also fine. The best is Bismillah, Wallahu Akbar. So, saying the name of Allah, according to most scholars, is an absolute requirement. A Jew or a Christian may mention the name of God in any way that's appropriate in their religion. Okay, so they can mention whatever they want to mention about God, however way that they do it generally in their religion. So they're not going to be saying Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. Especially not someone who doesn't speak Arabic, for example, or doesn't know any Arabic. And the reason for this is it purifies the act, since animals are living creatures, like I explained. If someone accidentally forgets to remember Allah during the slaughter, then what? It's overlooked. Right? Now, would anybody actually forget? Yeah. First time I did it, I forgot myself. Because first time, it's like you're cutting an animal for the first time in your life. You get so excited, you completely forgot. So alhamdulillah. So if you accidentally forget, it's overlooked. The same applies for a Jew. The same applies for a Christian. However, if you intentionally omit it, if you intentionally skip it, then the meat is not considered lawful anymore. Okay? Now let me mention a few differences of opinion here. Like I said, this class we're going to mention some more difference of opinion, especially on an issue like this. So there are different opinions. The opinion of the majority of scholars, the Hanafi school, the Maliki school, and the Hanbali school, is that saying the name of Allah when slaughtering is absolutely mandatory, and it has to be done. Okay? The opinion of the Shafi'i school is that it is a sunnah. It is recommended, but it is not a requirement. Okay? Now there's a statement of Imam Shafi'i in his Kitab al-Umm where he says, but if somebody purposely neglects it, then it's not going to be allowed, whether that person is a Jew or Christian or Muslim. But the other scholars, later scholars of the Shafi'i school, they've said that even if they omit it intentionally, it's still going to be okay. Okay? Now, the Hanafi school and the Hanbali school requires that Jews and Christians also say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and there's no other, exemption to the rule. I was talking about Muslims first. So the Shafi'i school says Allahu Akbar, even for Muslims, is recommended. It's not a requirement. When it comes to Jews and Christians, do they have to mention the name of Allah or the name of God over the animal? According to the Hanafi school and the Hanbali school, they have to. They have to. According to the Maliki school, they don't have to. Okay? It's not a requirement for them, it's a requirement for Muslims. Okay? And the Shafi'is is clear, for them it's option, it's recommended, it's optional anyways. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit about some difference of opinion that happens. Okay, so this, in my opinion, is not the major, or it should not be the major debate about meat in America. But there are other issues why it should be a major debate. Yeah.
Just a quick question. You said earlier that we just have to say Bismillah, that's okay? For a Jew or a Christian, if they just say the equivalent of Bismillah, is that also okay?
Yes, equivalent of Bismillah in whatever way they're saying it. Doesn't even have to be in the wording. It could be in whatever style they're saying it. Okay. That's what we're saying. So the Malikis would allow that. The Hanafi school and the Hanbali school would not allow that. Okay, so there's a difference of opinion here, and it's a very big and significant difference of opinion. So we have to take that into consideration. Okay. Yeah.
Wouldn't what they, if we were talking about Christians, wouldn't they actually say in Jesus' name?
That's a good question. So the Malikis say, even if they use the name of Jesus or they say the Trinity, it still counts. It doesn't matter, because Allah, their argument is, Allah gave us the permission to eat their meat knowing that they're committing kufr anyways. Right? So that would, this thing. So that's that. I was going to say one more thing. I forgot what it was. Khair. Let's move on. So the Jew or Christian may mention the name of God. Okay, we talked about that. It purifies the act. Okay, where do you cut? You're supposed to cut between the throat and the upper bone of the chest. So this is the top of the throat area, upper bone of the chest. It has to be somewhere in between here. Right? It has to be around this area. Now, which part do you cut? Okay, this area is slaughtered for a certain reason. Right? Just imagine people had no guidance on animals at all. Imagine you didn't know anything about animals and you saw an animal for the first time in your life. And you're looking at it and you're like, okay, what do I do with this? How would you kill the animal? You wanted to eat it. People can think of all sorts of, I can imagine one guy will MMA fighter would jump on him and pin him down and start choking him or something like that. One guy would come and start stabbing him in the side, get his friends to stab on the other side and then throw him down or something like that. You'd be surprised. Some of them will cut from the top of the neck, from the top, and cut. Some of them would stab him in the heart. Someone may come and just stab him in the brain or shoot him in the head. Just think of how many different ways there is to actually kill an animal. What does Islam say? Islam gives us this guidance, and it says you have to cut right between this area. The question is, why this area? Because you have 4 major body parts right in this area coming together. They are the 2 jugular veins, which are arteries, which carry blood. These are major arteries. The esophagus, which is the food passage for the animal, and the trachea, which is the air passage so that the animal can breathe. All 4 combine and connect together exactly at this area in almost all these animals which we're eating. So by slaughtering it exactly at that point, you get all 4, such that the animal dies quickly because the air is cut off, right? Food passage is cut off so the food doesn't mix in with the meat. And all the blood is going to be coming out because these are the major arteries. So that all the blood comes out and the animal dies very quickly. Okay? And pretty much painlessly. And I'll talk more about that. So this is a very important, that it needs to be done exactly at this place. So it is minimum. It's a minimum requirement to get the majority of these 4. To cut the majority of these 4. If you just cut 1 out of 4, it's not going to count as a proper sacrifice. Or 2. You need to get the majority. So majority is 3 out of 4. Or if you view the majority, this will probably never happen, but if you want to get into the whole fiqh thing, right? If you cut like 51% of each of the four somehow, you know what I'm saying? It'd still be the majority. So whatever it is, the majority, right? So you can tell anyone who's, works on a farm or is into slaughtering, they know if they're cutting it or they're not cutting it. They can tell. So you have to cut the majority of them. Okay. If you cut beyond these and you cut into the spinal cord of the animal, or you cut its head off completely, just wipe off the entire head, it's considered to be disliked. It's not prohibited, but it's disliked. Why is it disliked? Because it's causing unnecessary pain to the animal. Because the animal can feel the rest of this pain coming through. Right? So it's unnecessary pain. It doesn't need to be cut off. Not to my knowledge. Yeah, no, there's no difference of opinion. That it's disliked. It's disliked. It's not going to render the animal prohibited, nor is it prohibited to completely do it. But it's disliked because you're harming the animal. Yeah. No, no, they will. They will. If you cut it immediately, we're saying if the animal is bled out for a little, whatever it takes, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, then you cut off the head. It's okay. But if you do it in one swipe, then yes, it's going to feel the rest of it because you're severing more parts. So the animal will, so it will cause unnecessary pain. Okay, now there's an exception when it comes to camels. So camels and other animals which have a long neck, right? What do? Do you slaughter at the same place in the neck or in other place? So let's take some animals. Which animals have long necks? Giraffes, ostrich, camels, geese, ducks. Maybe you could say horse perhaps, yeah. So these kind of animals, it's recommended that you stab them in their jugular vein. Okay? You stab them in the same place. Now where you stab them is like, let's take a camel, right? So the camel's neck is going to be up here and it's got a long neck. So at the edge of the neck, at the bottom part of the neck, that's where you stab it, right there, rather than slaughtering it. And the reason why you do that is for two. There's two reasons. Number one, it's a lot easier for the slaughterer to actually stab it rather than jump up on the animal and get on the top because it's such a large animal. That's one. The second reason is it actually dies faster and there's less pain to the animal because you're trying to get the blood out, right? So where is the blood flowing from? Where's most of the blood in the body? On the top part of the animal or the bottom part of the animal? Below the neck, right? The whole body is full of blood. The head has less blood than the rest of the body. So it's actually a better place to get all the blood out as well. So it works great. So you stab the animal in that area, making sure to stab the same minimum requirement that's here. And you stab it and you take it out immediately above the chest so that the windpipe, the gullet, they're also punctured. So it's easier and it dies faster. Okay?
So there's one more reason for the camel to attack them from behind because you can't actually just go and stab the camel. So you have to go from behind and stab them in the mouth.
You don't have to go from behind.
That's from, because the starter might be in danger when you go to...
The person might be in danger. Yeah, that's true. Camels can fight back. So you need to be careful of them. Yeah. So that's another reason. So I was going to say something else. But so stab in the jugular vein and it dies faster. Okay, so that's slaughter. Oh yes. So what if you slaughtered a camel or you stabbed a cow? You did the opposite. Is it allowed? It's disliked. It's makruh. It's disliked because that's not the ideal way of doing it, but the meat is still okay. But no one would really do that, But anyways, if you did it for whatever reason, it's okay. Now hunting. Hunting is a separate category. because there are wild animals which are not domesticated, and they may be very difficult. See, we're talking about, putting the animal to, we're going to talk about putting the animal to rest and everything. This is a wild animal running away from you. How are you going to do the entire proper procedure of zabiha or slaughter when it's a wild animal? It needs to be hunted. So you have to hunt it first. So this is a special exception to the general rule. So we just mentioned the general rule. Hunting is an exception to the rule. So it's for animals which are generally going to be hunted. So it means that you're allowed to kill the animal by wounding it rather than by slaughtering it. And if it dies due to the wound and bleeding out, then it's also allowed for you to eat it. Okay? So they have to die from blood loss. So let's take a look at some of the conditions. These conditions have to be met. So number one, you have to use, the instrument that you use to hunt has to puncture the prey and has to cause it to bleed to death. So for example, if you have a slingshot and you do a slingshot on a bird and the bird falls down, and it's dead, so you cut it up and everything, can you eat the bird? You can't, because it wasn't punctured. If you shoot the bird, right, like duck hunt, shoot the bird, goes down, you can eat it because it's generally going to be bleeding out to death. If you shoot the bird and the bird falls into a lake, can you eat the bird? Can you tell if it died from bleeding or from drowning? Yeah. If you can tell with certainty that it died of bleeding, you can eat it. If you can't, then it's very probable that it just drowned in the lake. So you don't know if it died from drowning or not, which we're going to talk about. So you're not allowed to eat it. So it didn't bleed out to death technically. It died due to the drowning. Right? So there's a different reason. So that's important to understand. If you...
Even on land, they can die because of...
So let's say you shoot a bird and you didn't wound it and you just hit one of the wings. And the wing, because of the wing, it goes and it was a really high flying bird and it falls down and just slams on the floor and it dies. You're not allowed to eat it because it didn't bleed out, you didn't puncture it. Okay? So it has to be punctured and bled out. So the instrument that you use, you can use a bullet as long as the bullet is, going to be puncturing, which generally most bullets today do that. Or an arrow. You can use an arrow, but you have to use an arrow that actually has a point. Some people will actually use like some kind of practice arrows with like a, dull tip or something like that. If it doesn't puncture, then it's not going to be allowed. The animal will die from the blow, but it's not allowed due to a blow. Number two, if you have a trained hunting dog, or you have another animal like a trained bird, or a dog, or I don't know, fox, or somehow. Imam Abu Hanifa made a good point one time. He said, you're not allowed to use lions for hunting. So people said, well, why not? We should be allowed to use lions. He said, show me somebody who can train a lion, who can actually hunt other animals for him. So anyway, any type of animal. So the animal goes, runs, grabs the prey, and from the bite, it's going to let the animal bleed out. The trick here is the word trained. So it has to be trained in the sense that it knows that it's doing it for you. So it goes and gets the prey and leaves it and doesn't start eating from it. And then you go and you get it. If it's not properly trained, it's not going to be able to do that. Okay? What did I do? Let's save questions, inshallah. Let's save the questions. Trained hunting bird. So if you have a bird as well, like a falcon or something, it can also do that. Anyone have one of these? Hunting bird, hunting dog? No. Stick with the gun. Pronounce the name of Allah. This is a requirement. It's a requirement. You have to pronounce the name of Allah before firing or before sending the animal out. Okay, so before you send the animal out, you have to say Bismillah, and the same rules apply like before. So if you have a bow and arrow, you have to say Bismillah on every arrow. If you forget on one arrow, that thing that you kill is not going to count. If you have a gun, you have to say Bismillah on every bullet. Okay, so this is a pretty important rule. So when it comes to slaughter, you're saying Bismillah on the animal. When it comes to hunting, you're saying Bismillah on the weapon. Okay, which means if you have a shotgun, okay, if you have a shotgun and you shoot the shotgun and you kill 2 birds with 1 bullet, right? and you said one Bismillah only, and you intended one bird, but somehow another bird just came in, and you got him. Is it okay? Yes, it's okay. No, for hunting, because your Bismillah is on the weapon. Because you have a trained animal, you send your dog out, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Bismillah Allahu Akbar, animal goes. After 20 minutes it comes back, mashallah, good dog. This dog got like 7 animals for you. Good dog. You know, you did a great job. You can eat all 7 of those with one Bismillah. Unanimous. This is across the board.
Not safe for the banana, or you pronounce salat. We have 2 lights and you pronounce salat.
No, this is, remember, hunting is an exception to the rule anyways.
But you gotta be careful. When you're not bringing another dead animal.
Yeah. So you have to know that it's bringing not somebody else's animal or a dead animal. You have to know that this animal was killed by your dog. Yeah.
Is this when you're loading the bullet, or?
No, when you're shooting. When you're shooting, not when you're loading. Oh, you load like 10 with 10 Bismillahs and then... No. You have to do Bismillah when you're shooting. So you pronounce the name of Allah before firing or sending the predator off. Okay. The same rules of hunting apply to slaughter in terms of Jews and Christians. Same difference of opinion, same madhabs, everything. If someone's hunting, he also has to be a Jew, Christian, or Muslim. According to Hanafi and Hanbali school, they have to say Bismillah, whether they're whatever religion they are. According to Malikis, Christians and Jews don't have to say Bismillah before firing off or sending the animal out, right? So that means that if you have some, let's say some Hindus in India, they went and they hunted some animals, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to purchase this from the hunters or whatever, still not going to count for you because they're not Muslim, okay? If the game is wounded, game meaning the animal that you're hunting, if the game is wounded and it dies, then it's lawful to eat. If you reach, now this is a really important point, if you reach the animal while it's still alive and it's injured, you have to slaughter it, because hunting was the exception to the rule. So if you reach the animal and it's dead, and you find it and it's like, you know what, we shot it and it died, it bled out, and it's on the floor now. If you reach the animal and it's still living, in the sense that, not that it's just moving, but it actually still has some life left in it, it's dying, you got to take out your knife and you got to slaughter the animal. Okay? That's a requirement. All right? So if you go hunting, make sure to bring a knife with you. Okay? Prohibited vessels. I thought I took this part out. Okay. Yes. Directly related to this? Okay.
What if the person doesn't have a sharp arrow, but he has a dull arrow with poison, like just with poison, is that acceptable?
No. Killing an animal with poison is not acceptable unless it's bleeding out. And you don't want to be eating poisoned meat anyways. So, yeah. Prohibited vessels. So, okay, I had a lot more notes on this. Anyways, gold and silver vessels are prohibited for Muslims to use, because it's a sign of extravagance and it's a sign of universal arrogance for the most part. Okay, that refers to using gold and silver plates to eat on, using gold and silver spoons, knives, forks, using gold and silver containers to hold your perfume in, and then you perfume yourself from that. Gold and silver pens, for example. Okay? All of these types of things. Now, when we say gold and silver, we're talking about, there's 2 things. We're talking about pure gold and silver. Okay? So, if we're talking about plating, it's not the same thing. So, plating is different. But when it comes to pure, it's not allowed. It's number 1. Number 2, we're saying that you're using them, meaning you're utilizing them. Okay? But to actually have them for decoration purposes, like you have a silver or gold pitcher or plate, and it just sits there. A lot of families do this. I've seen this in a lot of Muslim households. They just have like some plates that they don't use them at all. They just sit there. They're for decoration. Nobody uses them. That's allowed, because it's considered to be just a it's like a painting on the wall with some gold in it. So that's allowed. Okay? Let me think of what else. Anything that you're using. Anything that's decoration, you're saying. So let's say you have a money clip that's pure gold, right? Wouldn't be allowed because you're technically using it, you're utilizing it. If you have, there's so many different examples. If you had a golden tray, okay, which you do not eat out of, but you just used it to transport some food from one place to another, that's not really considered using it in the sense of using it. You understand what I mean? So therefore, it's not prohibited. Huh? Meaning that if you had a decoration, and then all of a sudden you say, okay, well, I'm going to use this to transport, my takeout food or something like that. Agreed, but at the same time, you're allowed to have as many gems and diamonds and rubies on your pen or something as you want. So this is because gold and silver. The reasoning is, I'm glad you asked this. The reasoning is gold and silver has always been seen as a standard of currency. So utilizing currency, pure currency, in something that you're going to use on a daily basis or on a regular basis is considered to be extravagance. Whereas if you're using luxuries or you have luxuries for decoration, that can be a form of extravagance, but it's not the same level of this is extreme extravagance. All right? And of course, it's like, poor people will be looking at you, this guy's eating from a silver, golden spoon, pure gold, and like, we don't even have any currency, we're using this as currency, we like to melt it and do something with it. So plated, gold plated, silver plated is not the same thing. So we're talking about pure gold. You don't need to know any different schools of thought. You just need to know my opinion. That's it. In the end of the day, that's all that matters. That's all that's going to be on your test. Inshallah. Okay? Yes. It's plated though. So that's it. So somebody gave it to you as a gift, and you're not using it for decoration. Even pure gold and silver for decoration is not prohibited. I'm not saying it's like 100% okay. There's the whole extravagant aspect, there's the pride aspect and all that. You have to be careful of all of that. But from a purely law perspective, it's not prohibited. No, jewelry is something different. We're not talking about jewelry. So we're coming to that as well. So that's universal sign. So eating manners. So this really doesn't come under the category of Islamic law, but I'm just going to mention them anyways. Generally, this will be mentioned in like another class. So eating manners, washing your hands before, there's a basis for that in the Sunnah. Saying Bismillah before you begin, that's important. Bismillah means in the name of Allah. So you say Bismillah or Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before you begin. If you forget, then you say Bismillah fi awwalihi wa akhirihi. Bismillah at the beginning and at the end. Or if you say Bismillah awwalahu wa akhirahu, it also works at the beginning, at the end. Which means you forgot to say it. So in the middle, if you forget, you say it, Bismillah. So this is really important. You should try and remind other people who are not used to, you kind of know they're not saying it. You have to teach your kids this. This is very, very important. Teach your children to say this by, sometimes you're saying it out loud. Even though you don't have to say it out loud, saying it out loud reminds other people at the table. So that can be a good thing. If you do it sometimes, you don't have to do it all the time. Eating with your right hand. So eating with your right hand is a highly, I wouldn't even say, it's almost at the place of necessity. Okay, it's almost at the category of necessity. Eating with the right hand, and the reason for that is, Islam teaches you an order, a routine. So you clean your private parts with your left hand, you eat with your right hand. You shake other people's hands with your right hand. So you do other things with your right hand, right side first and all of that, and the left hand is for other things, like cleaning your nose, cleaning your private parts and all of that, which we covered in the previous class. Don't move your hand around the plate, which means that eat what's in front of you. Don't start picking from other places and all of that unless the host does not mind. This is a shared plate. If you're eating in a shared plate and everyone has some food in front of them, and you ate your portion of the, chicken leg, and you're like, I want that drumstick, and you're looking, and that guy's got a drumstick, and that guy's got a drumstick, but they didn't put a drumstick in front of me. So you go and you grab the guy's drumstick, right? You're not supposed to do that, okay? Unless the host doesn't mind, in the sense that you're the guest of honor, right? And they're like, all of this is for you. These other people, they're just here, but you're supposed to eat this food. Then it's different scenario, right? If you don't eat all the meat and stuff, they're gonna get mad at you. Then it's different case. Eating from a common plate is actually recommended. Not high, but it's recommended. So like if you're eating pizza or something, you go out with the sisters or the guys or something, just putting the plate in there, it's something that the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to do. So he didn't really recommend it, but it's something that he used to do. Don't criticize food. It's important. Clean your plate and clean your fingers. So if you're eating with your fingers, you clean your fingers as well, licking them. Cleaning your plate, making sure to clean off everything. This is a huge problem amongst Muslims for some reason, is that there's so much food goes to waste. Whether it's in parties or in restaurants or whatever, the very simple thing is, take what you can eat, and if you're ordering some food and you don't like certain things in the food, just tell them, I don't want that. All right? So it doesn't go to waste. Like what I do is, let's say I go to like a Persian place, for example. You order a little kebab wrap, they're going to put like a half raw onion like on the corner. And I don't like raw onions. Okay? So I'll tell them, you know what? Don't put the onion in the corner. I'm not going to eat it. No one else is going to eat it. So just leave that out completely. And they're like, yeah, but it's free. I'm like, it's not a point. This is free. You can keep it. Okay? You can keep it as that's your tip. It's your bonus. You get the onions, inshallah. So order what you can eat so that you don't waste it. Wash your hands after you're done. Don't belch out loud. Don't do things to annoy other people. This is a hadith about that. Make the dua after finishing. The dua is Alhamdulillah alladhi at'amana wa saqana wa ja'alna min al-muslimin. And there's other du'as as well. So you can find those supplications online at makedua.com. Very easy. Great website. And when you're drinking, you drink in 3 or more sips, so that you're not just drinking, gulping the entire thing down. It's more quenching, and it's also healthier for you. If you are drinking from a vessel, a container that's shared by other people, you shouldn't like breathe in it or spit in it or something like that, because people will get annoyed with that. But if you're drinking from your own vessel, so like for example, you have a cup of chai, or a cup of tea or coffee or something like that, it's really hot and you want to blow into it, that's perfectly fine. Some people, they read the hadith and they think that you're not allowed to blow into your own cup of tea, but that's not what the hadith was talking about. It's talking about a shared vessel. Sitting while drinking is recommended if there's no reason for standing. But if you stand and there's some reason, because it would either just take time, or it would just be unnecessary to sit down or whatever it is, you can stand and drink, and there's nothing wrong with that. Although there's some difference of opinion among scholars. Imam Nawawi, he talks about this in detail, but most scholars have pretty much said there's no dislike in standing, as long as there's some kind of reason for it. Other people are standing around or whatever. Eating while standing it's along the same lines. Yeah, all the hadiths that talk about standing and eating and standing and drinking, they have opposite ahadith which talk about the Prophet peace be upon him doing the same thing. Yeah, it can be disliked if there's no reason. So if there's a reason for it, you should just recommend it to sit down. If everyone is standing, or you're in a hurry, or you're grabbing something quickly or whatever, there's no special requirement that you need to go and sit down. So this is important to understand. Because I remember one time, I'll just tell you my own story. I remember one time I was watching one speaker when I was young, and I knew about this ruling in this. I had learned about this hadith and all of that, and I saw this speaker, and somebody gave him a glass of water in the middle of his lectures. I won't mention which sheikh it was. Someone I really, really respected. And the moment I picked up the glass, I said, you know what? All these other speakers, they're all a bunch of liberal guys. They're not going to do anything. But this guy, I guarantee you, he's going to follow the sunnah. And he grabbed the cup and he drank. I said, I'm not watching this guy's videos anymore, man. That's it. This guy's out of the book and everything. The thing is, this is a misunderstanding that people have. You have to understand that there's more to it than just reading one hadith to arrive at a ruling. You know, so I did start watching his videos again afterwards, after a while, a few years or so. Yeah. Okay, yeah, very good question. Very good question. Overeating versus wasting food. What do you do? So this is something that I've really been, thinking about for several years. What do? You end up eating other people's leftover, or you just cannot finish this. It's going to mess up your life and everything. The thing is, after consulting with several people, several scholars and everything, I've come to the conclusion that due to our current lifestyles and health and all of that, it's better to leave the food and not overeat because of the health risks that happen on doing, especially on a regular basis. If it's one time and you generally don't do that, something else. If you could take the food home, you could do whatever, that's the best thing to do. If there's absolutely no way to do that, there's no opportunity to do that, don't overfill yourself because you're going to harm yourself even more than some food that's going to go to waste. Yeah. Yes, there is. Yes, yeah, we know that. We covered that in another class also. Yeah. How much? Okay. Okay. So, okay, yeah. So the hadith is, the Prophet, peace upon him, he said that you should only eat as much as you need. This is a summary of the hadith. You eat as much as you need to keep your back up straight, meaning that you need to survive, to stay healthy. And if you're not able to do that, and you just have to have more, then don't exceed 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and make sure you leave 1/3 for air, meaning leave 1/3 empty for space to breathe. Okay, so this is the way that we should be eating. We should not be eating too much. Okay.
Sometimes they don't have a choice. I mean, you're at a party and they're serving you food, and they put that plate in front of you. It's already pre-made, right? So, you have to make that choice.
So you have to make the choice of.
Overeating is already in a way wasting food, right? Think about it.
Yeah, so I say it's better to leave some of the food. It's better to leave some of the food.
There's actually a non-Muslim restaurant. They teach us how to follow our sunnah.
There's actually, alhamdulillah.
Put like more food or you have extra food in your plate, like all you can eat, they charge you for the extra food.
Not non-Muslim. There's, alhamdulillah, Muslim. No. In Saudi Arabia, mashallah, in Saudi Arabia even, they established, one brother, mashallah, established a Muslim restaurant where if you don't eat all the food in your plate, you have to pay a special penalty. And alhamdulillah, it's amazing. And this, mashallah, Allah has put barakah, really blessed this person's business. It's booming. And everyone's happy because they know that it's a problem. See, they accept that it's a problem. So alhamdulillah, this is awesome. All restaurants should do this, actually. Just as a sign of, goodwill. He's doing it out of goodwill. I can see some restaurants are doing it to get more money, but as a sign of goodwill, sincere person, that would be great. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So you have to be smart, and also you have to be wise. If you go with the group, don't let the guy who doesn't know what he's ordering order. You have to take initiative. You say, no, brother, you don't know. We can't handle 8 plates. I will handle the ordering. You just sit back and relax, and I'll take care of this. So let's go through the questions. SubhanAllah, I had it right here. Okay. Now we get to the questions on meat. Okay, so animal slaughter. So why do we slaughter at the neck? We already explained that. All the vessels are there. What about torturing an animal? Is torturing an animal considered to be... the main question is, if your animal is tortured, are you allowed to eat the animal of the meat that's been tortured? Or should you not eat it? Or is it not allowed for you to like it? So here's the thing. It is on the border of being prohibited, or it's extremely disliked to make the animal suffer while slaughtering unnecessarily. Okay? And you can do that by treating them roughly without necessity, which a lot of people do. They drag the animals around. You can delay the slaughter once the animal has been pinned down on the ground. So once you put the animal down on the ground, You don't just leave it and start having a conversation and you talk on the phone and the animal's sitting there. That's another way. And a lot of people, listen, these are common practices. Sharpening the blade in front of the animal. It knows that it's, you sees a knife, animal can figure out that what's going to be happening. That's also disliked. Cutting off the head when slaughtering, we said that. Cutting from the back of the neck rather than from the front of the neck, same thing. Not sharpening your knife properly. Peeling off the animal's skin immediately before it's even died completely. So it can still feel that pain if you're going to rip its skin off. These are all things which are extremely, highly disliked. If you, and people do these things for a reason. Because it's either faster or there's some, monetary benefit to it or whatever it is. If you torture an animal without any reason, there's it's not a justification, but there's no reason at all, then it's a major sin. It's a major sin in Islam. Okay? But are you allowed to eat the meat of one of those animals? Yes, you are. The meat is allowed for you. But if you have the opportunity to somehow put pressure on an organization to stop the torture practices, then yes, you can organize something like that to boycott their meat. Then it's a separate ruling. Then yeah, you should try to avoid it to participate in the boycott. Can another person say the name of Allah while the one guy is cutting the animal? No. Can somebody else say it? For dhabiha? No, we're not talking about, not someone does it on your behalf. Meaning, you have the knife in your hand. Somebody says Bismillah and you're cutting. No, the person who's doing it has to say it themselves. Same thing applies with the hunting gun or animal. Is machine slaughtered meat halal? Now that's a long, long topic. So I didn't categorize this as much, but let's take a look at machine slaughter. So let's take a look at what is, how is meat generally slaughtered today, right? There are factories, right? We don't have generally our meat where we buy from different places doesn't come from just little farms or something like that. They come from giant, huge plants owned by multi-billion-dollar corporations, right? These are huge factories. So when it comes to chickens, I'm going to give a very basic summary of what generally happens, okay? So when it comes to chickens, they come in in truckloads, right? Or they're already at the facility. And basically what happens is they're hung up by their feet on hooks and they're lined up on giant assembly lines basically. And there's a rotating spinning blade that just keeps on going and the chickens are passing through and it's just cutting them. And then the entire process, they move through, they get dunked into water, come out of the water, then they go through, and sometimes they have the machine which actually goes in, takes out all the intestines and everything, process the entire thing. In fact, some machines are so advanced that you just get the entire end product. So actually end up boxed and everything. It's ready to go. Almost the entire thing at the end of the assembly line. So that's pretty much the way the chickens work. When it comes to beef, there are other things. They also have sometimes assembly line, but the way that they're being slaughtered is going on, all of that. So the thing is, I'm going to talk more about stunning and all that in a second. The question is, because of all these modern methods, are there any issues that have arisen for Muslims when it comes to the process of slaughter and all of that? Assuming that, these are, let's say, Muslims doing the slaughter or the machine itself or whatever it is. So I'm going to be addressing some of these points now and some of them in a few minutes, inshallah. If I don't get to all of them, please ask me. But for now, two main issues. One is, does the person say Bismillah? Right? How can a person say Bismillah when it's on a machine? So what do you do with the fact that a machine is actually being used rather than a person? Right? So there are, in the actual practice of Muslim slaughterhouses, there's a few ways of doing it. One is, when the guy comes to work in the morning, before he turns the machine on, he walks into the office and he says, Bismillah wallahu akbar. And then he turns on the machine, and that's it. The entire day the machine runs, everything goes fine, and he comes back the next day and he walks in the office and says, Bismillah wallahu akbar. This is one. Number two, there is a Bismillah wallahu akbar written on the wall where the chickens are passing by. So the chickens are passing by and there's this giant Arabic Bismillah wallahu akbar actually written. This was in some places in the UK. They actually had Muslim slaughterhouses which written there. They say this suffices. Third way of doing it is to have a tape recorder of somebody saying Bismillah wallahu akbar that's repeating itself so fast while the chickens are going and getting processed and the recorder is just going and going and going. Okay. A fourth way, no, this is very, very common. You'd be surprised. Omaha, Nebraska, all these plants, they have this process. The fourth way is that they have, because this, keep in mind, these chickens, we're talking about processing so many chickens, when it comes to chicken especially. Chickens are going so fast. We're getting between 100 to 200 per minute, depending on how many lines you have and all of that. So, one of them, they got 5 guys to stand around in a room right next to the chickens, and each one of them is saying Bismillah wallahu akbar, so that, because if you're doing 100 a minute, you can't even say that in 1 second, right? So therefore you can only do 60 in a minute. You can only do 60 Bismillah wallahu akbar, not even that. How much can you do? Bismillah wallahu akbar, that takes like a second, right? You could do 60 max. So they had like 4 or 5 guys in a room, all of them blasting out Bismillah Allahu Akbar for like 3 hours straight, you know. And these guys, these guys need their water, you know. So that's number 4. So these are all issues. Okay, these are all issues. So what is the solution to issues like this? Okay, first of all, the wall, Bismillah written on the wall, is problematic because being on a wall is not being said. So this is not going to really count. Number 2, the tape recording also is not going to count because it's not a real human voice. So for example, if Shaykh Faqih goes to lead the prayer and he says, this time we're going to do it Shaykh Sudais style. And then he puts the Shaykh Sudais recording on and he does the Allahu Akbar part and the rest Shaykh Sudais just goes for Taraweeh, mashallah. Everyone's going to be happy, I'm sure, but it's going to be a problematic prayer. You're going to say, no, the prayer doesn't count. So the tape recording is not going to work either. Okay. Number 3, the 5 guys or 4 guys in the room or next door or whatever it is, or even the ones who are sitting right in front of the chickens, it's also not going to work because they're not the ones who are doing the slaughtering. Right? So this is also problematic. Okay. Number 4, what was number 4? The guy who enters the thing. Okay. So the guy who enters the factory or something like that, that's also problematic because he's not even in front of the chickens in the first place, right? So that would be like somebody saying Bismillah wallahu Akbar and then going and walking over into a place, getting the appointment, grabbing the chicken and then saying it afterwards, or not saying it and then doing it. So that wouldn't work. But here's some other options which some scholars have approved. Okay. And this is all assuming that the opinion of mandatory saying Bismillah wallahu Akbar is a requirement. Right? Imam Shafi'i would not have an issue with either one. He says, it's not my problem, this is your problem. Right? Because I say it's recommended. But, so here are some solutions. Some scholars have said that you can say Bismillah wallahu Akbar before you start one assembly line of the machine. Okay? On one line of chicken. Why did they say that? They said that because they say processing chickens today is some kind of matter of general necessity because of the population that we have and the type of, at that time people also used to eat meat. Right? They used to eat less, but still they used to eat meat. So the amount of population that we have compared to what needs to be done, this is one way that we can do it, and it's like hunting. So remember the shotgun example? If you have a shotgun and one shotgun, let's say, takes out 5 birds. So they're saying this machine as a whole is like this giant weapon, right? Which you're starting, and you're starting it with Bismillah Wallahu Akbar, and it's like a hunting dog or a super shotgun that's going to be taking out like 1,000 animals in one shot. And it's going to be done in a few minutes. Your hunting dog, in terms of time, when you released it, you said one Bismillah Wallahu Akbar. It can go and hunt for 30 minutes with one Bismillah, and it can come back with 5, 10, 15 animals, whatever it is. So they say that this can suffice for that. Now the counter argument is, hunting is an exception to the rule. So the question is this really an exception to the rule? I'm not looking for an answer. I'm not giving an answer either. But I'm just getting you to understand the different variables that are involved. So this is one. This is one opinion. And this is Mufti Taqi Uthmani, who is actually a Pakistani scholar. He brought this idea up at the Fiqh Council several years ago, and he wanted it to be discussed. So I've not been able to read the conclusion. I know he's not taking the opinion, but he came up with the idea in the first place, and he says, I want to see what's going to happen. But then his response was, he says, but that's if it's really a necessity. His solution to the problem is that Muslims should get rid of the blade, the automated process of just the blade part, and they should hire those 5 guys who are sitting in the room. They should actually give them knives, get them out on the floor, and have them do the actual cutting themselves. Okay? So in terms of processing speed and time and money, the amount of money that we're talking about is, let's say, $10 or $15 an hour for 3-4 guys, right? Who are generally going to be working there for the packaging process and all of that. So what he's saying is, replace the machine with actual people, and if you have enough lines, you'll actually be able to produce the same amount of chickens than you would with a machine. So one scholar from Northern California, he's actually taken this idea to heart, and he started a processing plant. One guy from Foster Farms, I believe, one of the big companies, one of the guys accepted Islam, who works there, one of the main managers. So he took on this project anyway. So what they have is they have a bunch of lines, and they're doing, if I remember what number he gave me, he said they're doing like 220 chickens per minute. So in terms of, usually the argument is that you can't get the same speed if you were to do this process. But he's actually showed that no, you can actually get the same amount of speed. And Mufti Taqi Uthmani's theory actually works in practice. The second thing is, it raises the price of meat on a very large scale. But if you calculate how much it costs to have these 4 guys at, let's say, whatever, $15 an hour or something like that, compared to the actual price of the output quantity of actual chickens, I was calculating it, it's actually not that significant. So this is an interesting solution. So this is one solution, one argument, and then there's a second argument. Third argument by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, he says that you're allowed to say Bismillah on one line of animals as long as you can see them. And if you can see them, you say Bismillah on the line, push the button, you start, and then the next line comes, you say Bismillah again, and you push the button and you start again. So these are all issues when it comes to the machine part, okay? So this is one. The second problem with machine is, where did I go? The shock. Okay, so let's talk about stunning. So there is standard procedure of stunning chickens and beef and other animals in most Western countries in particular. They use 3 different types. There's electric stunning, there's gas stunning, and there's captive bolt stunning. Okay, so electric stunning basically means that you electrocute the animal. This way that it's done is few ways. For chicken, when they dip, before they dip the chickens in the water, before they get to the place of slaughter, they dip the chickens inside water and they apply an electric current to shock them so that they become numb, and then they go and they get slaughtered, and then they get dipped in water to take out the feathers and everything. So this is one form. Second form of electric stunning, that's for chicken, almost always is done that way. The other form of electric stunning is done for cattle, where they have like a little stunner with electric thing, and they just put the thing to the head, and it basically shocks them, they're like electrocuted for a moment and they fall down and then they slaughter them. This is one. Second one is gas. So gas stunning is actually it's not common anymore, because they used to either apply some kind of gas in the animal, or they shoved the pipe down the tube and they bloated it up and the animal got stunned, then they killed it. So that's very rare now, I think, as far as I know. And there's captive bolt stunning, which is very common. So captive bolt is basically a gun where you shoot the gun, but instead of a bullet coming out, this bolt comes out and then comes back inside. So it goes out and comes back, but really, really fast and powerful. So what they do is they take the gun and they put it up to the cow's head and they shoot it so that the pellet, it goes in, it punctures their brain and comes back out. Right? So they say, okay, this stuns the animal, and then the animal's not going to be feeling the same amount of pain when it's being slaughtered. So the question is the meat on stunned animals, or first of all, there's two questions. One is stunning the animal allowed in Islam? And the second question on this is it more humane? Because the argument is that it's humane. Historically, slaughterhouses did not start stunning animals for humane reasons. They started stunning animals for the ease of the workers. Right? It's just convenience. It's easier to deal with the cow that's on the floor and not moving at all, right, than one that's actually going to be moving and you have to pin it down. If anyone ever pinned down a cow before? Had to do it? It's not an easy thing. You need a few guys on the cow. It's not an easy thing. So it just makes it easier to just shoot it in the head or something like that. So is it more humane? Now the argument about humaneness has come out. So there's actually research that I have somewhere, some of my notes here. There's actually a German professor, he did a study by implanting electrodes into the brains of certain cows. And then he was testing on whether the stunning procedure or whether the slaughtering procedure that Muslims and Jews generally use is causing them more pain. And just to summarize, due to time, he concluded that the amount of pain, basically what happens is when the animal is slaughtered, it basically within a few seconds, first it doesn't even feel it. So the moment you actually do the slaughter, it doesn't actually feel it because the knife is so sharp. It's like somebody, when they cut themselves while shaving, right? You can't even tell sometimes, right? But then you see the blood start coming out and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I cut myself. So it's so sharp that the animal doesn't feel it initially. So they were checking the brain and the signals weren't going. So initially when it was cut, it didn't see it. Then immediately while the blood is flowing out, the animal actually went into a state of shock. So it was not able to feel it. It went into a state of unconsciousness. So it was not actually able to feel the rest of it, and then the animal is kicking. Now the thing is, people see, they see the animal kicking around, and they see, that shows you the animal is suffering. But the test showed that the animal is kicking as a natural reaction. It's not kicking because it's necessarily suffering. It's not actually feeling the pain at that time. And they look at the stunned animal, and you see the stunned animal is not moving. So, oh, it's so nicely at rest, right? But so the thing is, people have had these two arguments. One of them is, when you stun the animal, right, you're not feeling the pain. But the counter argument to that, which kind of makes sense, is that, look, if someone wanted to slaughter you and stun you, and they come and they say, you know what, I don't want you to feel the pain when I'm going to slaughter you. So you know what? Brother Jamil, actually, he has a baseball bat behind you, and he's about to hit you, and then boom, you knock him out, right? And then you slaughter him and say, while we're slaughtering you, you're not going to feel the pain. But what about the stun, the pain from the actual stun, right? The baseball bat is going to hurt, even though you get unconscious. So there's that whole debate. And of course, I think it's pretty clear that the slaughter is one of the best ways to go, for sure. But if there was some way to kind of improve the process a little bit, by giving some kind of, I don't know, magic pill that doesn't affect the meat and doesn't affect the animal and doesn't cost too much and kind of numbs a little bit of the pain or something like that, then there's no problem with Muslims using that. But this kind of stunning is not, is definitely not an ideal thing. So the Islamic Fiqh Council, and this is the World Fiqh Council in Mecca, they gave the fatwa that stunning is actually not permissible. And this is surprising because this is not a council that takes very firm stances generally. But their opinion was that stunning is not permissible. Although many other scholars say it's permissible, but it's disliked. But the thing is, most slaughterhouses, if you want to be USDA approved and all of that, you have to stun. Okay, you're required to stun. Now the problem with stunning now is, does the animal die? All right, so this is about the humaneness of stunning. The question is, does the animal die? All right, your clarification?
You're talking about the studies by the professor. You mentioned that when the way Muslims do slaughter, that the study showed that the animal didn't feel the pain. But you didn't mention that when the animal was stunned, they felt like what they were feeling.
See, the thing is, what they showed is they showed whether the animal was feeling the pain after the stun. They weren't looking at the actual stun itself in detail. Right? So that's the thing. So and the thing is, how do you measure pain? Right? So it's very difficult to measure pain in terms of, do you measure it in terms of intensity or measure it in terms of length? How can you can't ask the animal, which one was more painful. There's just no way to do it. So all you can see is you can check brain activity, and you can see what kind of brain activity is going on and what does that seem to indicate. And how long did the brain activity go on for? Right? So it's difficult to actually conclude anything because you're never going to be able to figure out what the cow is actually feeling. Right? So it's difficult, but just our general perception of, if someone were to shoot you with a bolt in the head, for example, I would assume it'd be very painful, So, khair, I mean, yeah, that's what they make. But the amount of pain that you're getting from that compared to the no pain from the slit, because you can barely feel it. No, but the difference, because when the blood starts coming out, you go into unconsciousness immediately. So there's a difference. So you naturally go into unconsciousness because the blood is coming out. Here you go into unconsciousness because it's just so much pain for you, like you just got shot, basically. So I think there is pretty much a pretty big difference. So that's exactly what we want to talk about. So if the animal dies from the shock, so there's two problems. So one is, according to, and this is old research, unfortunately, I couldn't find anything more recent. They saw that 10% of chickens, 90% of chickens suffered cardiac arrest, and it led to death in 10% of the chickens that were generally receiving this electric stun. So that's a pretty significant portion. So the thing is, even if you know for a fact that one chicken has died in a group of chickens, you're not actually allowed to eat that meat anymore. So the thing is, but like I said, this is a little bit old research, but the Fiqh Council actually gave to all the Muslim countries a specific voltage range which they can use to make sure the animal's not dying. So that would apply in many Muslim countries if they're following this Fiqh Council, which is very influential. But in America, the way masjids are organized, an Islamic organization, that anyone can make their own masjid, anyone can make their own Islamic organization, anyone can make their own slaughterhouse. So there's no regulation actually in America, in the Muslim community in America. That's just the fact. It's just the way it is. You can go tomorrow, and I'm not giving you this advice, but you can go tomorrow and you can make a masjid right across the street and register a non-profit organization, get your own council and everything. And of course, don't worry, IOC, we would, make sure nobody goes there. We would take you out. But no. I'm just saying that you can do that, and that's what's happening. So there's no regulation in America. So the whole idea of giving you a range doesn't mean that it's actually being followed in America. So that's one issue. So the electrocution of the chickens is one problem. Second problem is the captive bolt stunning. So the thing is, when you shoot the captive bolt in the head and you walk away, right, and you leave it, if you leave it for whatever period of time, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, by the time you get to slaughtering, the animal already died. Because it's a penetrating stun, meaning it hit the brain of the animal and it's already on the way to dying. So the thing is, this is a question that I've had. I've been trying to figure it out, find out if there's any type of USDA regulation that it has to be slaughtered before it actually loses its last life or something like that. I've not been able to figure it out, but it wouldn't be surprising that people will not really care too much to make sure that the animal dies. So this could be a potential issue. So it is a potential issue. So the thing is, you can't say one way or the other whether or not it's guaranteed. As for the other electric stun on the cows, I've not looked into that in detail. So these are some of the issues, and the issues need to be worked out. So in my opinion, the main issue about eating zabiha meat and non-zabiha meat is not the bismillah issue. In my opinion, this is the main issue, that if the animal dies before it's slaughtered, then you're not allowed to eat it. And there's no difference of opinion on that. So when it comes to saying bismillah, there's a difference of opinion. When it comes to an animal dying, there's no difference of opinion across the board. Animal dies, then you cannot eat it anymore because it cannot be slaughtered anymore. Okay, so that's just some food for thought. How would you know that? You wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that. You just, if you go to, let's say, a group of Jews that you trust, or a group of Christians that you trust, and you know that they're doing it that way, you don't have to sit there and investigate them. If they're telling you, you know what, these are my Christian friends, and this is how they slaughter, and this is what they do, and this is their procedure, okay, I believe you. The Muslims, the same thing. So the Muslim, if we know them, and if they're doing it, we assume the best about them. Right? So see, generally the rule is to assume the best about people. So if they're doing something, you don't have to investigate in details. Unless you know for a fact. So if you know that they're using stunning, and you know that they don't care about these issues, then there's a problem. Then you have an obligation to investigate. Okay? And as a community, we should be investigating.
I want to ask them, 10 years ago I was very concerned about being coming from outside, find a family member, they live in Australia. If you went, it was very great news. It was actually they paying high amount of money for a Muslim bashar. If they're really following with a small quantity price, and they are slaughtering like 3,000 lambs in 24 hours. There's no machine, it's only like 2 or 3 people, 24 hours, a shed.
In Australia?
Yes.
Yeah, that lamb is actually in Costco now.
Yeah. So, I mean, what happened is, I was really concerned. I said, my own family member, and they went to it, and they saw actually there was a lot of, they hired a lot of Muslims for this, and this is a good news.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so alhamdulillah. So we'll get back to that. Is it sufficient to use a tape recorder or write basmala on the wall? We said no. Can we assume that in a country where the majority are Christians, then our meat is fine to eat? This is a main question. So the answer is only if it's well known that they slaughter properly and that they take care that only Christians are actually hired. So if you have a community like that, you're fine. Right? You're fine. If you don't, then there's another issue. Now the other question is the United States a Christian country? Who says yes? Raise your hand. Who says yes? Raise your hand. It's not a trick question. Who says yes? Raise your hand. Raise your hand again. Who says yes? Who says no? The majority said no. Okay, those of you who said, okay, we don't have time to debate it. Anyways, the thing is, how do you define what a Christian country is? So what is the percentage of people that say they have no religion? Do you know, it's like statistic-wise, there were statistics. Guess how many people said that we have no religion? 20%. Over 25%. So does that still apply as a Christian country or not? It depends. Are you talking about over 50%, under 50%? How do you define it and all of that? That's a whole debate, but that's not the issue. The issue is, if we assume it's a Christian country, or let's say we take any country, we take, what's the most Christian country you can think of? Italy is the most Christian country. Has anyone been to Italy? Okay, if you said the Holy See, I can understand. You know, just the Vatican as the Holy See, right? SEE, right? They have their own United Nations representation as a country. You see, world politics. So, if you were to say, let's say Vatican, right? If you were in that region and in that area, right? Then generally the general rule would be, well, you assume that whoever's slaughtering in here, if the meat's coming from here, then that person is going to be a Christian. So if you know that they're practicing the actual proper practices of slaughter that generally agree, then that would be generally you assume that it would be okay. So the two issues are, number one, are they actually only Christians that are being hired in the store? And the second issue is, what is the method of slaughter and are they practicing? Right? Are they actually using that method of slaughter today? Now when it comes to Jews, for the most part, if you're not talking about Reformed Jews, Jews who actually care about kosher, they do have certain slaughtering practices. So then the only issue with the Jews comes down to whether or not they say Bismillah or not. Okay, and we said this difference of opinion. Hanafi school and Hanbali school require them to not say or say? To say. And which school said that they don't have to say? The Malikis in part. Shafi'i say no one has to say it. No one has to say it. Okay? So that's the whole thing about that. These are all, wait. Hold up on all questions. We need to finish this. Is it sufficient to say one Bismillah when using a machine? Okay, so we already talked about that. Standing Committee, Islamic Fiqh Council allowed that. Resuming require another Bismillah, like shooting 5 birds. Okay. Are you allowed to eat the meat of people who claim to be Muslim but are not actually considered by us to be Muslims? Such as Qadianis, Aga Khanis, and the Nation of Islam, 5%ers, Baha'is. Huh? They don't claim to be, alhamdulillah. So that's one less thing to worry about. It's good. Right. So Nation of Islam, 5%, these type of people. So are we allowed to eat their meat? They're claiming to be Muslim. No, because in our opinion they're not. Now the question is, are we allowed to eat the meat of Mormons? Because they're claiming to be Christian, but the Christians are saying that they're not Christian. Right? But then the Catholics are saying that the Protestants are not Christian. And the Protestants are saying that the Catholics are not Christian. So what do you do? Yeah. Scholars are also divided about this, and I have no idea. I really don't know. So. Yes, I mean, there's a debate. Some scholars have said it's a Christian country. Personally, I don't think it's a Christian country. No. On this, there's no real final conclusion. The conclusion is you need to be aware of what's going on. This is a huge issue in the community. It sometimes divides communities. It sometimes causes friction within families because one person wants to eat this meat, another person says, no, I'm not going to eat this meat. The first goal is to understand the other person's position and to see if it's grounded. And why is this important? Because sometimes, and I want to be very clear, I want everyone to stop talking right now and pay attention to this. Again, like I mentioned before, there's two extremes. One extreme is, this is the school of thought that I follow. And this is the only right way. And if I see you doing something wrong, I'm not going to accept that you're doing that. It doesn't mean that you have to eat their meat. They should respect your position. But you shouldn't be looking down on them if they're taking something which is really a legitimate opinion. That's one extreme. The second extreme is that people say, you know what, these people are just being really extreme. I'm going to take a light opinion, and therefore I got my opinion that, you know what, America's a Christian country. And generally, they're going to be slaughtering okay. So you know what? I eat everywhere. I eat McDonald's. I eat this restaurant. I eat at the Chinese restaurant. I eat at the Indian restaurant. I eat everywhere. Okay? If you have a fatwa from some scholars who are saying that, okay. But now you go on a business trip to Japan. And you go to a Japanese restaurant and you're eating chicken. Where is that Japanese restaurant getting its chicken from? Are they Jews and Christians? Like we assume that they are in America? No. But I guarantee you that 90% or I would say 95% of people who eat in America, assuming that it's a Christian country, when they travel to a non-Christian country, it doesn't click that they're in a non-Christian country and they're not allowed to eat anymore, and they keep eating. This is a major problem because there's no difference of opinion across the board, and there's no room for difference of opinion. So this is a major problem. So if we need to first work out these two things. Other things we need to work out. These two things need to work out very, very well, and they need to be clear in the minds of people. Okay, so I think this is very important. I hope, does everyone get that point? So if you're going on a business trip, if you're eating right now, whatever you're eating McDonald's because this is the fatwa that you've gotten. Okay, this is the fatwa you got. But you go and you take that same scholar and you ask him, if the other McDonald's happens to get local meat from their environment, or they have their new whatever burger chain, and you happen to be in Ukraine, or you happen to be in Thailand, or you happen to be in Vietnam, or one of these places for business, South Korea becoming more Christian, whatever, you cannot eat at those places. There's no way, absolutely no way, because these are not Jews and Christians or Muslims who are doing the slaughter, for the most part. Okay, unless you find a halal restaurant, or you find a kosher restaurant, or you find a group of Christians who are actually doing it, then it's a different scenario, right? So just keep the question, inshallah. So that's important to know. Is it recommended to face the qibla while slaughtering an animal? The hadith regarding this has been graded to be hasan, which means it's good, but it's not highly authentic. So if you can do it, it's nice, but it's not really highly recommended. If the butchers in a slaughterhouse are of various religions, and I don't know which one of them slaughtered, can I eat the meat in that case? The answer would be no in that case. Okay? Questions on hunting. If the animal strangles the prey without wounding it, then is it allowed for me to eat? No, it's not allowed. Same thing with the shooting the arrow or the bullet. It must die of the wound in order to be properly eaten, and you have to slaughter if you reach it in time. Eating manners. Is it true to start and end your meal with salt? Okay, the hadith regarding that is actually fabricated. But there's a report by one of the companions that mentioned it, and some of the scholars mentioned in their books that it's recommended, but the basis for it is really not very strong. Avoiding doubtful foods. So we're not done yet. We still have more interesting. Miscellaneous questions. Avoiding doubtful foods. So what do you do if you have a doubt that this food is halal or not halal? So initially you generally assume that most food is going to be permissible, but if you doubt that the slaughter took place, then the assumption is that it's unlawful. And this applies to meat. So for example, you go to somebody's house to eat. This is very common. And they're Muslim, should you ask them if their meat is zabiha, halal or not? By the way, halal and zabiha are synonymous in reality. Just people have different standards of what is considered to be halal. But they're actually the same word, because everything has to be zabiha, meaning slaughtered. It's a requirement. So just your definition is different. So these are not different words, by the way. Some people say, no, it's halal, but it's not zabiha. No, there's no such thing as that, unless you're hunting. Right? So they're the same thing. So what do? Do you ask or you don't ask? What is the general principle? Okay? The general principle with Muslims, right, who are practicing, who you know practice Islam, right, is that you don't ask. But if you know, or you really have a more than 50% doubt that they actually don't eat the meat according to my standard of what is halal, then you should ask. Does that make sense? No, but when should you ask? You ask when, see, the thing is, you assume the best about the Muslim. So you're already putting them in a default state of, because they're a Muslim, you assume default that it's going to be halal. But if you have a greater than 50% doubt, this is just like wudu. Remember we talked about, do you have wudu at Fajr time or not? If you don't remember, if your doubt is greater than 50%, then you ask. If your doubt is less than 50%, you don't ask. Okay? It's the same as wudu. It's not a sin to make an extra wudu as well. But you don't have to do it. Right? I'm just saying, what should you do? This is the general rule. So if you know that they eat according to your standard, or you don't know, it depends on the 50%. Okay? So let me finish these things, and then I'll answer. There's some more interesting stuff. We haven't even gotten to second lecture. Is it disliked to eat the meat or the eggs of animals which have been treated inhumanely in factories? So I talked about this already. The meat is still pure, the eggs are still pure, but if you can organize a protest against it, then you can boycott it. Are proteins that are taken from human hair okay? Okay? L-cysteine, which is in almost all of your bread products, comes from human hair. So proteins taken from human hair. Or what if hair falls in your food? You can't find it. Are you allowed to eat it? The thing is, human beings, eating any part of a human being has also been prohibited, just like eating any part of a pig. But the reason of the human being is because of their honor and their status. Okay, so that's the reason why it's been prohibited in the first place. So the thing is, when it comes to hair, this is really pretty much the only major issue that comes up. When it comes to human hair, what happens is, this is the problem, L-cysteine that comes from China is made from human hair. They take it from the barber shops, they scoop it up, they put some acid on it, mix it up and everything, and then they put it in our bread, in our bagels, in our donuts, and everything. So that's there. There's also synthetic form of L-cysteine, but it just costs a little bit more money, and everyone would like a cheaper product. So the thing is, what do you do in this case? Well, the thing is, first of all, the hair itself is already detached from the body. Okay, so this is one issue. And when it comes to hair that's detached, the sense of honor is not exactly the same as if a human being had actually died. So this is one variable in the equation. Second variable is, does transformation take place? Right? And I don't know. And I don't know any scholar who knows. So I don't know. Number 3, does istihlak or dilution take place? Okay? So generally, a quantity of L-cysteine in a product would definitely be in the category of dilution if you take the opinion of dilution. Okay, so that's where we are with L-cysteine. Are we allowed to eat raw onions? It's disliked to eat raw onions or raw garlic before entering the masjid due to the smell. Is it allowed to eat a mermaid? In your dreams? Yes. Is it allowed to eat raw meat? Not undercooked, raw meat. Yes. Yes. Is it prohibited to eat milk and fish together? What about the hadith? There's no hadith. There is no hadith. This is a classical medical issue. So some hakims and people in the past have said that mixing these two together causes problems. Most likely, it doesn't cause problems in all people. It may cause problems in some people. So for medical issues, if you wanted to avoid it, you can do that. And if you didn't do it because there's no real medical issue, or you don't feel that there's a medical issue, there's nothing wrong with combining the two together. Is it allowed for me to be a vegan? Are you allowed to be a vegan? You're not going to be eating any animals. The thing is, if you are being a vegan due to the reasons of animal cruelty or due to health reasons, then it's fine. But if you are doing it assuming that the act of sacrificing and killing an animal is cruel, then there's a major problem, because Allah would not allow something that is cruel and inhumane in the first place. So you have to be very careful when it comes to these green movements, because sometimes they have amazing things, but sometimes they can cross the border and get into sometimes Hindu philosophy and all of that, killing any living creature or something along those lines. So you should not think that you're doing something better than the Prophet ﷺ actually did. So it's very important not to cross that line. Should I ask a Muslim if they purchase dhabiha meat? We already talked about that. Do I have to check the ingredients of all the products that I buy? Do you?
I do.
You don't have to. You have to check when you have a suspicion or a doubt that this product may have an ingredient. So for example, okay, if you go to the store and you're going to buy, what is the most halal product you can think of? You're going to buy orange juice, right? Are you going to read the ingredient package of an orange juice to see if it's been mixed? Every time, let's say I'm switching my brand from Tropicana to whatever, right? And you know what? Before I switch brands, I need to make sure that there are no pork products in my orange juice, or there's no human hair going in my orange juice. And this ingredient, I don't know. This could maybe be from human hair. I better, pull out my phone and do some research on the ingredient. You don't have to do that, because there's no reason to assume that orange juice is going to have that kind of ingredient. If you know now, all of a sudden, someone came out with the orange juice which has some product which is haram, and now you've come across the knowledge, and it's pretty good, pretty reliable knowledge, not some wacko guy from the masjid, but some pretty reliable knowledge, then you are obligated to check. So as soon as your suspicion of level of doubt reaches 50%, you have to check. Now you can never measure 50%. You have to figure out what is your 50%, right? If you go and you're going to be buying rice, just plain rice, they can mix anything in there that they want, right? But just straight white rice generally is not going to be mixed with something in there. So you're not obligated to check the ingredient. If you want to, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But to go and say, you know what, brother, you didn't even check the ingredients, it's not right. Because there's no reason to assume something like that. So if you're buying a product where, Pop-Tarts, right? I know that Pop-Tarts have gelatin. Albertsons just released their own brand of Pop-Tarts. So then you say, okay, well, you know what? That looks like a Pop-Tart without the frosting. Does it have gelatin? Doesn't have not gelatin? Then I have to check, because you have a precedent. You can't say, well, no, that was only the brand Pop-Tart, so I'm not going to check the other one. No, you should check the other one as well, because there's a precedent for it. If there's no precedent for it, then every cereal you buy, you're buying cornflakes one day, and then you switch, I'm going to buy this muesli product. And so, my kids, they want the chocolate one. Do you have to check the ingredients of every single one? You're not obligated to. If you want to, you can do that, but you're not obligated to do that until you have a product where there's some actual doubt. Okay, leave the question. I have a lot more questions before all of you ask your question. Using hormones in your plants or animals. Okay, there's a few issues. One, if you're a farmer, factory owner, if you don't declare that you're using hormones, then that can be a form of deception, so that would be not allowed. If hormones are proven to be harmful, then they would be prohibited. And if they're proven to be slightly harmful, then they would be disliked. Now there's a debate between Americans and Europeans on hormones in plants and animals and all of these things. And there are like two madhabs, they're like two giant schools of thought which are competing with each other. And generally we assume that large corporations in America are funding the other side of the debate, which probably is true. But the thing is, if it can be clearly known that yes, these are definitely bad for you, then it would be prohibited or disliked depending on the level of the effect that it's actually going to have on you. And hormones are another topic, I can talk more about that, but we're going to leave that for now. If you're invited to eat at a meal that's sponsored by a drug dealer or a major bank, right? Both of which have majority of all their income from unlawful sources, or somebody his only business is he owns liquor stores across the board, and then he invites you for dinner. Are you allowed to accept that invitation and eat at that place? The answer is, if you know that they have other income outside of that, then you can assume that the other income, the lawful income that was used to purchase that food. If they have no other lawful income and that's the main source of income that they have, then no. You should not be accepting that. That would be anyone who goes and does one haram transaction then. How do you know which one is which? So you generally assume that the money that they're using would have come from a halal source, unless you're doing it as a sign of protest against the person, to get them to stop. But here's the thing, oftentimes people think that by protesting against the person they're going to stop. Generally today, in our society, I think is the opposite. That they need da'wah. They need to be, befriended, and you bring them to the masjid and you talk to them about Islam, and that's going to change them more than this, because there's no society pressure anyways, because there's no society. There's no actual community, like a family could have put some pressure on you in a tribal society. We're not in that society. So I think it's the opposite applies. Yes. Yeah, I know. Agreed. But the thing is, it's at least recommended to avoid when you know 100% of the money is absolutely unlawful. Even though the money may not be, if that person wants to buy something from you, you can take it. If that person wants to give you a gift, you can take it. But when it comes to going and eating from them, that they're buying something for you along those lines, then there's a different ruling. Sponsoring a meal, because the thing is, the bank is 100%, all their profits are coming. It's the same thing. So just leave that 1 second. It's a lot more questions. If I've gone through all the fatwa websites and I got all the really good questions. If food has an unlawful name, like bacon chips, but there's no bacon in there, or devil's cake, cake of shaitan, right? But there's no haram ingredients in there, is it okay? Okay. Some scholars have said that bacon chips could be disliked because it resembles the pork in a sense. Okay. Now I can understand that, but what if you say turkey bacon? So turkey bacon is different because we're not ascribing it to being pork. Whereas bacon chips, we're talking about pork chips, but there's no pork in there. You see the difference? Okay, so there's a difference in the two. Chobani? Greek gods. Same thing. So devil's cake. Devil's cake, Greek gods, Trinity ice cream or whatever it is. Okay, all of these things, they're just a name. They don't have any effect. And if you're making it yourself, just rename it. Say, oh, mashallah, you brought devil's cake. I brought angel's cake. Right? Because there's a white angel's cake, right? Okay, sorry. I brought jinn cake or something like that, You don't know if it's a good jinn or a bad jinn. It doesn't matter. The name of the food is not going to affect the actual food. So I'll get to one more. If a Christian or Hindu prays over the food, they pray over my food, are you allowed to eat it? Yes, you are. If they walk up to your burrito and they start making this dua over your burrito, you think I'm not going to eat it because they made dua? No. I'm not talking about the ones that are coming from their ceremony. I'm talking about if they actually made a prayer, like for example, Christians, they make the prayer before they pray and all of that. So if some Hindu comes or something like that, and they start making this prayer over your food, you can eat the food. That's different. That's different. Okay. Let's see. Hold on. Let me answer these ones first. Food that is addictive. Okay. Food that is addictive, whether it's mildly addictive or severely addictive, is it haram? Why do people ask this? Because they ask about caffeine and they ask about sugar and they ask about other things. The answer is no, unless there's another reason for the prohibition. So even if it's a little bit addictive, because you can say that tasty food is addictive. All tasty food is addictive, right? But it doesn't make it prohibited. Is it true? Okay. Is it true that by saying Bismillah on an animal that was not slaughtered properly, it becomes halal? Have any of you read the hadith in Bukhari, authentic hadith, where Aisha, she came and she asked, is this meat halal? And he said, I don't know if this meat is halal. And the Prophet said, say Bismillah and eat. Let's say you don't know. I don't know. Huh? So let's say you don't know, or let's say you know this, you just found some random meat somewhere, right? There's a burger somewhere, and you're like, I don't know where this meat came from. There's no source. So what are you supposed to assume generally? We talked about the principle. The general rule is that you're supposed to assume that it's not okay to eat. Now, if you say Bismillah, can you make it okay to eat? No, but you don't know. You can't figure out where it came from. There's no way to figure out where it came from. So what is this hadith business?
Well, there's some scholars that it's okay if you're in a foreign country, say Bismillah, it's good.
There's not a single scholar who's ever said that. I guarantee you. Huh? What's his name? Huh? He was kicked out from where? He was kicked out from because of this ruling. He should be kicked out. No. I tell you what. Even if a scholar mentions the hadith, a lot of people don't understand what he's trying to say. This hadith clearly, and I wrote an article on this. It's on my website. This hadith clearly says that this referred to a group of Muslims who slaughtered the animal, and Aisha did not know whether they slaughtered it correctly because they were new Muslims. But I'm telling you that 99% of people who quote this hadith don't know the part that Muslims were slaughtering the meat. And they assume that it was not non-Muslims who did the slaughter.
Sorry, my thing, I'll just correct myself. Going to a restaurant, not like eating in a restaurant here and the state or...
But that's something completely different. The point is, saying Bismillah after the animal is dead cannot do anything for the animal. You're supposed to say Bismillah before you eat anyways. That's what the Prophet was saying. Alright, so he was giving the green light because these are Muslims and you should assume the best about them. Even though they're new Muslims, you should assume that new Muslims still would have learned how to slaughter correctly. That's what this hadith is saying. So I would say this is probably one of the top 5 misquoted hadiths probably in the world today, unfortunately. Rennet, okay, we talked about rennet already, is whey halal. So whey is the fluid that's left over after you add rennet to the milk when you're making cheese. So the rennet and the whey would have the same ruling, same ruling that you have before, depending on whether you accept dilution and all those other things. Are kidneys, hearts, and spleen allowed to be eaten? Yes, because that type of blood remains in the body and it's overlooked. Can we eat halal meat that is sold by a non-Muslim? Non-Muslim guy owns a restaurant selling halal meat. Can you eat the meat? If you trust him. And if you trust him and there's no reason to not trust him, you can. Can you eat the meat of a sinful Muslim who's selling alcohol and selling drugs in the back of the store and he's selling halal meat? Yes or no? Yes, it's halal. Because if there's no other reason to doubt this person, he's got a certificate, you know he buys from a company, right? There's no reason to doubt him, then you can go ahead. Because the scholars assumed that you don't trust this guy because he might be lying to you. In a traditional society, you wouldn't do that. Because he's selling like his meat on some little store, you don't trust this guy. But in America, or let's assume that we had a good halal standard. This guy's got a certificate and you can investigate where he gets his meat from. And if you catch him, he's going to jail, right? Or he's going to be sued or whatever it is. They're going to be careful. So you can buy it. Now, if you were to organize yourselves to protest against this guy by boycotting him, then you can make it disliked to go there as a community. So this is something that, well, my teacher in France, they opened up a restaurant next door, and it was like, we got tired of French bread like every single day. So they opened up a shawarma place, and everyone started eating there, and our teacher said, no, you're not allowed to go there. For you guys, we need to boycott these people until they stop selling alcohol, because they need to learn their lesson, that you can't just, do this half and all of that. So this could be a form of boycott, especially when it's nicely organized. Of course, sometimes, young people, we went and ate there anyways, but we agreed in the end of the day with his decision. If you're drinking alcohol? If the guy drinks alcohol? No, even if he drinks alcohol. The meat doesn't change. If the guy comes in front of you drunk, okay, and he's got like heroin, needle sticking in his arm, right? The meat doesn't change. If you know that it's in a box, and you see the box is coming from a specific place, it's got a label on it, it's fine. No, the thing is, if you have a doubt, clear, real doubt, then it's fine. But the non-Muslim guy, he drinks too. So why are you going to eat his meat? There's general standards today. So you go with the standards, not just with, what's coming over. Okay, clarification from last week. The locust does not need to be slaughtered. Okay, I checked it. Locust does not need to be slaughtered. It can be dead and it dies. And actually, I forgot, there's a hadith on that too. It's not authentic hadith, but it's there. So it does not need to be slaughtered or punctured or whatever. As for the other insects, in the Maliki opinion, I've not been able to check, unfortunately. You checked that? It doesn't have to be boiled? Okay, so the crab doesn't have to be boiled. It's sea creature, so same thing. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I love crab as well. Lastly, and this is a major problem. Food that's fried in oil that was used to fry other meat, which is dead meat or pork. And then you put the bacon in the fryer, then you pull it out, then you put the French fries in the fryer, and then you pull it out. Is there a transformation that takes place? No. Is there dilution that takes place? No. Dilution? Yeah, probably not, I would assume. So this is problematic. So what do we do about it? No. I don't know, but generally avoid it. But how often does it really happen? On what level is it happening? I could assume it happens on a large level, but this is very problematic. Cooking bacon on the same grill. So you got your bacon on the grill, and then they take that off, and then they put the omelet on the grill. They take it off and they put the sausage on the grill. Could be problematic, right? So what do you do to what level? If the grill is cleaned to even some general extent, or it's being cooked side by side, and this is the bacon place and this is this place, or they take that, that little scraping thing, they scrape it out, basically. Just little tiny cleaning process there. That would be something that should be okay, but do they generally do that? This becomes a problem. Lastly, pizza. Pizza. So you order a cheese pizza. I know. This is painful. I know. He's like, just stop, man. Just stop. I know this is painful. I know. It's 1 o'clock. So this is the last one. So pizza. Okay, you order pizza, and they take the cutter and they cut your friend's pepperoni pizza, and then they take the cutter and then they cut your cheese pizza. So I asked my teacher in France regarding this, and I said, you know what? Because he's generally considered to be little bit, liberal for my taste, as well. So I'm like, he's going to say it's okay. And he's like, for you in America, 100% haram. I'm like, why? I'm like, what about for you? No, in France, it's okay. What the heck? What is this? No, he always had this. He always had these things. See, in America, he said, I know your country. You guys have the right to demand that they wash the blade or they switch the blade. You have the right, and they're not going to do a thing to you. You got care you can call. You got this you can do. You can sue them. You could do whatever. You have vegetarian movements and everything. He says in France, we ask him to clean the blade, and they'll kick us out of the store. and we're never going to get pizza. No, seriously, that's how it is for Muslims in France. So he says, your fatwa, you guys, you better take advantage of the rights that you have, and you better start asking. You better make them clean, because they're going to clean and they're going to do a good job as well. French people, they'll be kicked out. I got kicked out myself of a pizza joint just for being Muslim. So the thing is, we have to take all these things pretty seriously, and inshallah. Yeah, it's very simple actually. Yeah, either you ask them to not cut it, and you cut it yourself at home, have your own pizza cutter, or you ask them, make sure to clean the blade. And you don't need to check it. You don't need to, investigate smell just in case it's a little piece or something. If you told them to do it and they say, yeah, we'll do it, khalas, you're done. Okay? Inshallah, subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursaleen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.